Have you been looking around the landscape and finding it to be a little depressing? You're looking for any sign of color as reassurance that spring will soon be arriving. Well, perhaps you need to add some evergreens to your landscape. Now, there's a lot of great evergreens to choose from for our Oklahoma landscapes, but you first want to look at the space where you're going to plant an evergreen. What are you wanting to do there? Are you trying to screen a view? Perhaps you want something with flowers or berries. Or maybe you just want an evergreen ground cover. Well, we've got 5 great evergreens to show you.
Number 1.
Often our winter landscapes can leave us feeling exposed. As the leaves fall off of our trees, we're exposed to different winds, new sights, and even sounds that we might be hearing. Well, if you'd rather not be exposed to all these new winds and sounds and sights, perhaps you need to add a large evergreen plant. A lot of times we would use pine trees for this, but in the past few years, our pine trees have had some difficulty with diseases. I'd like to introduce you to this large evergreen tree. It is Arizona Cypress, and it's a great, very reliable evergreen for Oklahoma. It prefers well-drained soils, but it is drought tolerant and hardy to zone 7. As a native to the southwestern part of the United States, it thrives in hot, dry conditions. Now, as it matures to a height of 20 to 25 feet tall and a width of 15 feet wide, you'll notice that the bark will start to exfoliate, leaving patches of orange and green on the trunk of the tree. But one of its most distinguishing characteristics, of course, is this lovely icy blue foliage.
Number 2.
Anytime we talk about evergreens, we always talk about junipers, and it's no wonder because they're so well adapted to a lot of different soil types, and they come in a range of sizes. Now, a lot of times when we think about junipers, we think about a green plant, but I want to introduce you to this one that has chartreuse new growth, and that growth then turns to this copper bronze color in the wintertime. This cultivar is called Lime Glow, and it's a relatively small creeping juniper. It only gets to a height of about 6 to 12 inches tall with a 2 to 3 foot spread.
Number 3.
We can't finish talking about evergreens until we've covered an evergreen ground cover for the landscape. This is blue spruce sedum, and you can see how it gets its name as the foliage does resemble a blue spruce, but it's much softer to the touch. As a succulent, it retains a lot more moisture in its leaves, and therefore it will be a drought-tolerant plant for you. It will get nice, small yellow flowers on it that contrast nicely with this blue foliage, and it is very hardy from zones 3 to zones 11, and it makes a nice plant for that accent container or even your rock garden.
Number 4.
Perhaps you're looking for a little bit more of a tropical appearance, maybe something to add next to your pool. Well, here we have a dwarf palmetto, and while it looks tropical, it is actually a native to Oklahoma and hardy to zone 7. This is a great plant. It is somewhat drought tolerant, but it actually prefers moist soils and some overhead shade. Now, this plant will do nicely as a specimen in either a container or in the landscape, but you can also plant several of them to create a hedge. And it's quite attractive as these leaves get larger, the larger it grows, and they get to a size of about 4 to 6 feet. Now, I have to tell you, you're going to need some patience to get it that big because it is a fairly slow grower. In late spring, this plant produces some creamy colored flowers that are soon followed up with some black berries that are edible, and they taste a little bit like a date. This plant, the dwarf palmetto, was selected as this year's 2017 Oklahoma Proven Shrub of the Year, and rightfully so, as a very unique, attractive native evergreen.
Number 5.
Now, I know this plant is not a showstopper just yet, but give it a couple of months and you're going to need to put a sign out in your yard telling everyone what it is. It's not only going to stop your neighbors that are walking by, but it's also going to stop all the hummingbirds and bring them into your yard. This is crossvine, and while it's not a true evergreen, it is a semi-evergreen, which basically means the leaves tend to persist and hang on throughout the winter months, depending on how severe our winter is. It is similar to our wild trumpet vine that you see growing out in the forest. It does have a trumpet-shaped flower. This particular cultivar is Tangerine Beauty, and it'll be covered with orange trumpet-shaped flowers. Now there are some other cultivars that have more of a yellow flower and some that have more of a red flower as well. It's a very robust vine and it will tend to sucker, so you want to make sure to give it plenty of space and something strong to grow on. While there are many different evergreens that we could have highlighted, these 5 show you the variation in size, shape, and appearance that are great for our Oklahoma landscape. And just because we call them evergreens doesn't mean that they're green.
We hope you enjoyed this video. It's part of our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. You can also find even more videos on our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.